You do have to now eat 3 lunches each. Are we live on YouTube? Excellent. I'll just do a song and dance routine until we're ready to go. So to everybody online, do make yourselves known. Put your company details in, project details if you have a project in mind. Let everyone know that you're interested in round 10, and hopefully there'll be some online networking as well as in the room networking. There will be opportunity later for some companies to pitch their ideas, so make sure that you take note of those so that you can contact them as well if you're online rather than in the room. I think we're just about ready to go. Got a few people sneaking in at the back. Excellent. Right, I'm going to call that a start. So good morning to everybody in the room and online. My name's Jonathan Abra. I work for Innovate UK KTN. This is the briefing and brokerage event for round 10 of the Energy Catalyst programme. If you're not familiar with Energy Catalyst, we'll be telling you all about that soon, and then after we've heard all the information, there'll be time for everybody to speak to each other. So all the usuals, you found the tea and coffee out at the back there. We've got water at the sides, please help yourselves at any stage. There are also disturbingly great big jars of sweeties, so I'm not sure about the wiseness, or the wisdom of having those there. But anyway, there is no fire alarm planned. Should you hear a fire alarm, nearest exits are here behind me and behind you there. It would progress down to the ground floor via the stairs and then to Bedford Square, which is directly opposite the entrance to the building. Hopefully you found the toilets, which are out of the back door, turn left past the lifts. Other than that, let's crack on. So, this is what we're here for. Energy Catalyst is a funding programme. It's been running for a number of years. We're just about to launch. Did it launch? Next week. We're just about to launch on the 27th, I believe. Round 10 of funding. Hopefully you're all in the right room, and this is what you're here to hear about. The running order will be something like this. So, little introduction to Innovate UK and the Energy Catalyst. We'll talk to you about the competition. Most of the information about how to apply will be left to an online video, and we'll provide you with the links to all the rules and regs. We didn't want to go through everything in full detail. It gets a bit dusty. It's very important, but we'll give you all the information you need to know. Then there'll be a little bit of guidance on how to build your consortium and how to write the best application that you can. And then almost inevitably there'll be a bunch of questions based on what you've heard. So we'll have Q&A, go to a break. Afterwards we'll hear a very important presentation on gender equality and social inclusion. This has risen up the rankings in terms of importance. Very, very critical to your application that you understand all dimensions of gender equality and social inclusion. We're fortunate enough to have 2 previous winners present to us about their experiences of Energy Catalyst, maybe some tips and tricks, things to do, things to avoid. And then it will be the opportunity for companies in the room to pitch to everybody else about what they're planning to do, what they offer, what they're looking for in a consortium partner. If you'd like to pitch, but you haven't told us already, let me know in the break and we'll make that happen. Once we've heard from everybody, we'll move to lunch. There will be lunch in the room where you had tea and coffee, and then we've got the room until 3 o'clock for everybody to network, spend some time getting to know as many people as you can, get your message out, and let's go. At which point I'd like to hand over to Tony Mohammed, and Tony's going to tell you what this is all about.
So yeah, I'm just going to say a few quick words before I pass over to my colleague Amy to run through the slides. So I just wanted to start by saying Tony Mohammed, so one of the Energy Cat program leads here today with Amy. I just want to say a very quick welcome to you all. It's great to see you all in the room today and online. So it's just a very quick thank you for coming. And secondly, Amy is going to cover a lot of the content, but please do engage in the Q&A and the networking session later if there is anything unclear. Between the three of us, we are here to answer any of those questions and make it as clear as possible today for all of you to have the information to put in a fantastic application for round 10. So yeah, just wanted to say a few words from me, and I will now pass over to my colleague Amy to run through the slides.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. So I'm Amy, and as already mentioned, I'll just be running through kind of who we are, what the opportunity is that we have today. So first of all, we are Innovate UK. We are the UK's innovation agency, and we drive productivity and economic growth by supporting businesses to develop and realise the potential of new ideas, including those from the UK's world-class research base. So our mission is to help UK businesses grow. We do this in 3 ways. So we inspire, we involve, and we invest. So we basically want to make a shared vision of what the world might be like in the future with visible opportunities. We want to bring everybody together like we are today. And we also want to convene the resources that we have and more. And what is the Energy Catalyst? So the Energy Catalyst mission is to accelerate the innovation needed to meet Sustainable Development Goal 7, so that's affordable and clean energy. And we do this by providing financial and advisory support to innovators like yourself to help create strategic partnerships, uncover insights, and develop business models to improve lives in Africa and Asia. So the core values are, as I mentioned before, accelerating solutions, so providing that financial and advisory support to springboard innovators. We want to build networks, so the support we provide catalyses strategic partnerships and connections across the energy access ecosystem, and hopefully that helps commercialise new technologies and business models. We unlock impact. The support aims to help innovators pioneer new ways to improve lives in Africa and Asia and create more economic opportunities. And we want to share knowledge. So by uncovering the new insights from the testing and development of demonstrating of innovation, we contribute knowledge, case studies, and lessons learned, which benefit the wider energy access ecosystem. So what is the challenge that the Energy Catalyst is trying to resolve? In brief, around 789 million people still lacked access to electricity in 2018, and without sustained efforts, 650 million people will still be left without access to electricity in 2030. So the opportunity to help those challenges is very, very prevalent. The vast majority of those gaining access, so around 80% of people, are in urban areas. So this represents a major opportunity for decentralised and smart energy systems. So how do we deliver this vision and this mission? So there are 3 main activities within the Energy Catalyst programme. We have collaboration, competition, and acceleration. With the collaboration, we bring people from across the world together who have the needed expertise to develop an innovation for market. Part of today is bringing you together for that collaboration opportunity. We have the competition, so we run open funding calls. So Energy Catalyst Round 10 is the next opportunity to provide grants for innovative solutions. And then we have the accelerator programme. So those who are awarded funding are also put onto the programme to make sure that they are commercially ready as well as technologically ready for market. So I'll do a little bit of impact before going into the competition information. So the Energy Catalyst has supported 256 energy access relevant projects to date, and that's across 400 unique organisations targeting over 38 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia. We cover a very varied range of technology across the programme, the largest at the moment being biomass and bioenergy, but all the way through to solar, mini-grids and energy storage. And here's an overview of where we have funded so far. So there's a lot of projects that have taken place in sort of sub-Saharan Africa, in places like Kenya and Nigeria, and also in Asia, primarily in India. But we are very keen to see an increase in projects in the Indo Pacific region in round 10. And here's a little bit more impact of the programme. I think it's nice to highlight that across the 9 calls so far, there have been around 174,000 people impacted, and that works out as about 77,000 plus end user connections. And here is the wall of fame for that accelerator programme that I mentioned earlier. So it just highlights a little bit more of the impact that the programme has had through both noteworthy news articles and fundraising activities, and that the impact is really broad for the programme as well. So, round 10. So a little bit of background. The Energy Catalyst programme is a part of the Ayrton Fund, so this is £1 billion across 5 years to support clean energy research, development and demonstration. There's a range of thematic challenges which we do cover for the programme. So this goes from next generation solar, sustainable cooling, modern cooking, efficient appliances, industrial decarbonisation, smart energy systems, energy storage, hydrogen, critical materials, and the need to leave no one behind and target poor and marginalised groups. So the Ayrton Fund aims to accelerate the clean energy transition in developing countries by creating and demonstrating innovative clean energy technologies and models. The Energy Catalyst programme is also, we have to cover ODA, so Official Development Assistance Requirements, as it is part of the UK aid budget. So any project that is funded must be able to demonstrate that there is a clear economic and social benefit to one or more of the targeted countries. I'll put up the targeted countries a little bit later. And the primary beneficiary of the project or the application has to be one of these ODA countries. The UK or other countries can be a secondary beneficiary. And if a project is judged to be non-compliant with ODA, we will not submit the application for assessment. Here are the funding sources. So we are funded through FCDO and the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, which was previously BEIS. So all of these contributions are counted as part of the UK's Ayrton Fund commitment. So we have up to £10 million available, and this also provides funding towards that accelerator programme and the variety of technology priorities. So this is probably what you're all waiting to see. So round 10 is open for applications on the 27th of February until the 28th of June. So you've got 4 months to get in an application. We have up to £10 million available across 3 strands. So you can apply into early stage, mid stage and late stage, and I'll touch upon the specifics of those a little bit later. And to be in scope, your project must address transforming energy access and clean energy. Previous iterations of the Energy Catalyst competition also had gender equality and social inclusion as an in-scope priority. However, GESI is now a marked question, but again, we will touch upon that a little bit later in more detail. So what is energy access? So transforming energy access aims to speed up access to affordable, clean energy services for poor households, enterprises and social institutions in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia and the Indo Pacific. It must do this by supporting development, testing or scale-up of innovative technologies or business models and must have a clear social or economic benefit in those regions. So I also want to highlight that we may use a portfolio approach to increase the number of projects funded within the Indo Pacific region. This was requested through the FCDO. However, as long as the benefit is in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, or that Indo Pacific region, it would potentially meet the scope. Clean energy is also key, so organisations need to have a business model or technology that addresses three key metrics of affordable, reliable and low carbon. It must do all three of these or it won't be assessed. So I just want to highlight that while any technology which meets the above criteria is in scope, priority areas will be focused around sort of the Ayrton priority challenges and also replacing diesel and petrol generators with sustainable alternatives. So here are the eligible focus countries. I'm not going to read out every single one, otherwise we would be here all day. But there's about 74. As you can see, the large majority are within sub-Saharan Africa. However, there's also South Asia and the Indo Pacific region. So I'll leave those up for a second so you can all have a quick look. Great. So the round 10 eligibility, as previously mentioned, there's early stage, mid stage and late stage. So early stage is feasibility studies, slightly shorter duration of projects, and with the early stage, UK SMEs can make a sole or joint application and they must be led by an SME academic or RTO, so research technology organisation. Early stage is the only stage where applications can be led by academics or RTOs. In mid and late stage, applications must be led by businesses. In the mid stage, which is industrial research, they must be collaborative and, as just mentioned, they must be led by a business. Some work must be done within one of the ODA eligible countries, so sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia or the Indo Pacific region. And there is a requirement for international in-country partnership. Similarly, late stage also must be collaborative, must be led by a business, and must have some testing or demonstration within those countries, and is experimental development, so slightly larger projects. I wanted to also highlight that the figures shown in all three stages are the total costs and not the grant. So depending on the size of your business, you'll get a percentage. But so if you had a £100,000 project and you were an SME, you would get 70% of that. Testing and demonstration has to be complete for mid and late stage. And as mentioned, early stage is the only stage that can be led by a university. I also wanted to highlight that any organisation from anywhere in the world can be a partner on a project. So it doesn't just have to be UK and one of the ODA eligible countries. You can partner with someone else as long as the focus is that ODA eligible country. So here's the types of organisations that we fund. It looks like we fund a lot of different organisations. We will fund every organisation, but I do want to highlight that you must involve at least one micro, small or medium-sized enterprise, so an SME. And if you are 100% owned by a large parent company as a subsidiary of that company, you are classed as that large company and will only be entitled to the relevant grant amount. So we have two types of leads within Energy Catalyst. So there's administrative lead. So this will be the recipient of the award and will distribute funding to all partners, not just international partners. This is a hub and spoke model, so you will be sort of accountable for the management of the finances within the project in accordance with the terms and conditions of the award. Administrative leads must be UK-based and you must claim funding through this competition. In the early stage, it can be the UK SME, academic or RTO, and then in mid and late stages, it can only be a UK business. Technology leads are slightly different, so they will lead on the development of the scope, work packages, and other work from a technical perspective. Technology leads can be from anywhere in the world. They can be micro, small, or medium-sized enterprises, academics, or RTOs. You must claim funding through the competition, and UK companies can be both the admin lead and the technical lead, but international companies cannot be both. And similarly, early stage, it can be an SME, academic, or RTO, and mid and late stages, a business of any size. So here is a quick overview of what an example collaboration could look like. But obviously, depending on who you are and who you're planning to partner with, collaborations will look different. So if you are doing a collaborative project, there must be at least 2 organisations claiming the grant within the application, including the lead. And the UK admin lead can count as one of the collaborators if they are involved in the project beyond that administrative role. And when we say collaboration, we mean at least one legally separate collaborator. So as long as you are not linked legally, you can be a collaborator. And something else to highlight is we are allowing resubmissions for Energy Catalyst Round 10. So if you have applied in before and been unsuccessful, you are allowed to resubmit that application. And a couple more bits of information before moving on to the next section of this presentation. We have the Energy Catalyst Accelerator, which I have mentioned a couple of times. So each project is automatically enrolled into this, and it's currently delivered through the Carbon Trust. It provides one-to-one support to primarily the technology lead, but the cohort is offered support. And then we also have reporting and monitoring. So each project will be allocated a monitoring officer who they will meet with quarterly, and this just captures sort of the key performance indicators, making sure everything is ticking along nicely. And then you'll be required to complete a post-project evaluation report. So I want to show a video, hopefully kind of summarising the programme, but also the impact that some of the projects have had so far. So I'm hoping...
Energy Catalyst has been transformational for UPI over the past number of years.
What inspires me is the fact that we're solving a real problem.
Our Energy Catalyst programme, we wouldn't have been in this region. We could never have funded a project like this.
It's the ability to create a reputational benefit of knowing that you've had funding from such a great partner as Innovate UK.
So we had the idea, but we were not in a position to be able to set up a project on this scale.
First of all, thanks for all your help and support.
We've come from far and we can see the future.
In the future, this biogas will change our lives. That's our hope.
You can say we are sponsoring the community. We are giving them a good future and a bright future.
So how can you get involved? We have obviously everyone in the room today, so please do take the opportunity to network with other energy access innovators. We also have an online virtual brokerage platform called BetaMatch, and you can sign up to BetaMatch at the link below, and we can circulate all of the links and everything provided today, to engage with over 300 organisations from over 25 countries who have signed up already, who are looking for partners for potential energy catalyst projects. You can view the virtual marketplace to find organisations across the energy access ecosystem. You can highlight what you are looking for in a potential collaborator, and you can set up one-to-one meetings through the platform as well. We are planning to host a couple of webinars online in the coming weeks based around different countries, how to do business overseas, things like that. So do sign up and keep an eye on the website, because the updates will be coming through very shortly. And then obviously we have the Round 10 competition. So if you are interested in applying, we have links for all stages, so early, mid and late stage. Again, these will be circulated at the end, but all the information can be found on the Innovation Funding Service platform. And as Jonathan mentioned earlier, advice on how to use the platform and how to submit an application will be provided following the event. So thank you for listening. If you do have any questions, obviously myself and Tony are in the room today, but we also have an email address. So if you go away and suddenly think of a question, do feel free to drop us an email. And otherwise, I'll hand back over to Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. We're well ahead of schedule, which is great because I tend to overrun on this bit. So, I'd like to talk to you about what makes a good application, how to go about doing this. It's all very well to have these links to when it comes down to it and you actually have to start doing this for real. What do you need to consider? So, building a consortium, who should you partner with? Well, the first thing that you need to consider is, do you need a partner? If you are a UK SME and you're applying for early stage, then you can apply as a sole applicant. However, clicker's not clicking. Oh, sorry. However, even if that is the case, if it adds value to your application, it is advised that, or you are strongly encouraged to partner. So you can apply on your own, but think about whether that's strictly necessary. So you've decided that you do need a partner or partners. Have you applied previously, either to Energy Catalyst or to something similar? Might it be worth contacting people that you've worked with before? Always easier to start from a warm relationship rather than trying to strike up a brand new one. Okay, great. You do have some partners already. Fantastic. Are there any gaps? Are you happy that the partners you've chosen actually address this call and what you're planning to do? Maybe not. Okay, so we need to go on the hunt. Let's have a look at what you need in your project partners. So, it's been demonstrated time and again that diversity in teams provides strength because you get different viewpoints and perspectives. Think of the criteria as the minimum that you need to satisfy. Don't just tick boxes because you want this money. You need to demonstrate that the partners add value to the consortium. Yep, there's no point trying to just grab somebody and say there's some money available, come along with us for the ride. The application form does ask you to demonstrate what it is that each partner brings to the consortium and to the project. So explain what that value is and why they in particular were the best people to select for this role. Do they have good connections in country? Are they technically excellent or experienced in doing this type of work and they've worked with you before? So really think about the description of the consortium and each member of that. And then what does a good mix look like? So you need somebody who's doing the innovation. This is an innovation competition, right? So we're looking for new ideas. You need somebody who's going to put this together on the ground. That might be the same organisation, but more often than not, it's somebody different. And the idea for Energy Catalyst is that innovation turns into a business idea. So think about what the business model looks like and have you got the right people in the consortium, in the group. So you've got the skills and the disciplines. Think about the diversity of the people in the mix. We're going to hear a lot more about gender equality and social inclusion, but it's worth thinking about who you've got in terms of personal qualities, in terms of personality, connections on the ground, cultural appreciation and access. So have a think. Do you need to do R&D in country? Is that part of the project that you're looking to deploy? This might seem like a stupid question. Do you know which country you want to work in? Well, not necessarily, because some companies in the room might be technology heavy. If you haven't ever worked in sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia, then there are potentially some options for you. There may be markets, multiple markets that you could apply to. If you identified a country, do you have connections there already? It's something that we can help you with. It's very difficult to do from afar without any prior contacts. So do use B2Match, do use Innovate UK and Innovate UK KTN. This is what we're here for. Make the use of the brokerage opportunities that you've got here today. So you've identified the country you want to work in, you've found some people there who you think are trustworthy and have the right skills mix. Governance, legal frameworks, what are the arrangements for doing business in that country? We do have some information on B2Match platform. We've got previously recorded webinars, but again, we've got access to information sources with which we can help you. And do you have access to suitable facilities or environments? Great. We've got a technology, we think it's going to work in this particular environment, in this particular country. Is there somebody who's got a bit of land that you can put it on? Is there an end user, an industry, or perhaps a community that you can tap into? A mini-grid that you can attach your technology to demonstrate it? All these things need to be thought about because you'll be asked. And do remember that you need to use the results to deliver clean energy access in these regions. Again, it comes back to the business plan. This isn't just for fun. It's not just for you to be able to develop your technology in the abstract. It's about being able to deploy it to deliver the impacts. And again, going back to that mix, can you demonstrate that the people that you've got in your consortium make this a reality? Is it likely that this will succeed? So, second page of what to look for in your partners. Credibility. We don't necessarily have to have blue chips, but we are looking closely at the application to make sure that the people who are receiving this UK government funding will be using it responsibly. So there will be checks to make sure that there is a legal entity involved, that they have some form of trading history, and it needn't necessarily be decades long and fully audited. There is a bit of flexibility. We recognise that some of the countries in which we're looking to deploy might not have the same sort of history of working in this renewable energy space. So you need to provide some sort of reassurance that the organisation will be able to deliver should they be funded. Have they done something similar previously? Have they received aid funding or development funding? Have they? Are you able to evidence that they've used that responsibly? And this is important, the capacity to deliver. You might have somebody in country who has 10 years of delivering similar sorts of projects, but if they don't have the capacity to deliver your project, the requirements that your particular technology demands of them, then that will be picked up. So a single person entity might not be looked upon favourably. I'm not saying they definitely won't. There have been instances where somebody high-placed has been involved in consortia, but you really need to think about whether the capacity to deliver is there and can be evidenced. And then there are the less tangible bits. So can you foresee working with these people for the next months, possibly years? Is there that special sauce, the X factor to the relationship, the je ne sais quoi, as the French would say, that allows you to think, yes, these are people that I can do business with? Because it will get hard. And there will be times when you're talking at cross purposes, or you might have different agendas, and you'll need to work through that. If you're bringing more than one partner to the consortium, you should think about whether they can conceivably work together, because you don't want to be dealing with squabbling third parties. Can they deal with each other when things get tricky and there are problems? Yep, they can. Great. Horse on. Think about whether you have the same objectives. Are they compatible objectives? And how well do these organisations present themselves? Are they enthusiastic? There's an awful lot of people out there trying to ride the gravy train, looking for funding, thinking that they can just jump on the coattails. They need to be able to demonstrate to you and to the assessors of your application that they are enthusiastic and that they will be there for the ride. How enthusiastic are they? Oh, I see. And again, this comes back to the X factor, the je ne sais quoi. Does their story ring true? Are they telling you that they're the best thing ever, but can't quite bring the evidence to the table? Yeah. I could use some choice language, but I won't, because we're being recorded and this is a polite audience. Can you cut through the blarney, the waffle, you know what I'm talking about? And above all, does it feel right? And if it doesn't, are you prepared to commit to 2 or 3 years of hard work, hoping that you can work it through and that it will come round? That's up to you, but I would suggest that if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, and there's a reason for it. And if you can't identify the reason, then that's just a judgment call for you. Okay, so you've gone through all these criteria, you've decided where you want to work, who you're going to work with, you've got your consortium put together. How do you go about putting your application in? Well, fortunately, Innovate UK KTN, which is the part of Innovate UK that I represent, has thought ahead, and we've provided this fairly generic good application guide. So if you're looking for funding, this is available at the link on the bottom of the screen there. Again, all these slides will be provided to everybody online who's registered, as well as the people in the room, so don't feel the need to take a picture or anything. Click on that and you'll be taken through how to align to the competition scope. So how to write your application so that you're utilising the language of the competition scope, that you are aligning with the aims and objectives of the funding. How to demonstrate that what you're doing is actually innovative. This is innovation funding. It's got to be new, it's got to be novel, it's got to be something that hasn't been done elsewhere, or if it has been done elsewhere, what is the innovative step that means that you can deploy it where you're aiming to do so. I've said it twice already. Is there a strong business case? You need to demonstrate that if there isn't already a business wrapped around this, there is a trajectory towards a commercial outcome. And allied to that is, what is the value proposition? So where does the value accrue in your project? What's new about this business model? How will you monetize it or otherwise provide value if it's not a profit-making organisation? Can you show us what your R&D pathway looks like? Have you got a credible plan of different steps in the development chain? What's contingent on what? How will you make this happen? The right consortium we've already dealt with. Hopefully you've got that. A clear need for support. This is a curious one. Well, I wouldn't be here if I didn't need support. Maybe. Tell us the story. Tell us why you wouldn't be able to do this without the Energy Catalyst funding. Show us that this funding will accelerate or will enable what you're aiming to do. And risk. That's a curious one. A common mistake that's made when applying for Innovate UK funding and other types of public funding is to say, this is a nailed down certainty, it absolutely will work, I can guarantee it. We don't want to hear that. What we want you to say is, I appreciate there is some risk. If there wasn't, you could go to the bank and get this funded. This is what the funding is designed to do, is to bring projects that have a degree of uncertainty in them to fruition. So you'll be asked to look at the different types of risk, how you will mitigate those, and what the residual risk might be, bearing in mind that there is support from your advisor. What do we call them? What are the terms? The people who support the projects? Project support manager. Thank you. So there will be people there to help you through the knotty patches, but you need to be able to really be able to demonstrate that you've thought about the risks and you can clearly explain how those will be dealt with. Oops, sorry about the formatting there. Above all, this needs to be something that excites and inspires, or at least interests the assessor. Please try to make it a story to a certain degree. Tell us what the need is for what you're planning to do. What is happening on the ground at the moment that means that you need to use this funding to make something else happen? What will happen as a result of this funding? We're talking about changing lives. Amy expressed the need for the Energy Catalyst programme, about the deficit in energy access and clean energy in all those 74 countries that were listed. So please just tell us what it is, what the difference will be in country, and what the difference will be for your organisation as a result of getting the funding. So you've read that as application guide, and you've sat down to start writing the submission. Please, 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 please look at the question asked and tailor your answer accordingly. Yeah. All too often we see applications in which people will just tell us what they want to tell us because they've told that story before. Make sure that it aligns with what is being asked. It really is fundamental. Do remember that assessors are human beings. Yes, they're being paid to do this. However, they might not be a specialist in your particular technology. They are a pool of assessors. We attempt to match them as closely as possible to the technologies in hand, but we can't guarantee that they will be an expert in your particular technology. After all, what you're doing is innovative, so you're the person that knows it best. So, excuse me, use the language that will inspire, that will generate interest. And make it easy for them to like you. Make it readable. Draw attention to the parts of the question that you're answering. Things like reflecting language are good, so that an assessor can say, ah yes, I can see how that addresses this part of the question, tick, marks. We're not looking to take marks away, we're looking to build a mark up from nothing. So do substantiate your claims. We're not looking for chapter and verse, but if you can say we have a patent and give us the patent number, or that you have written papers on this, tell us where they've been published, or you can say that you've got a connection to the Ministry of whatever in wherever. Maybe give us a name or some evidence that that connection really exists. I used to have a picture of a middle-aged lady here, but it doesn't have to be your auntie. Ask somebody who has no skin in the game to read it. See if they can understand what you're talking about. It helps if your auntie is, educated to a degree level and has some sort of knowledge of energy access issues, but find somebody, a friend, a colleague, somebody that's not part of the project. Get them to read it. They'll pick up on any language issues or inconsistencies, or if they fall asleep before reading the second answer or the answer to the second question, you know that maybe you haven't quite hit the mark. I think I've just said that. I said the same thing twice. Get somebody. It could be somebody that does know the sector, the technology, the country that you're looking to apply to, and just get them to read it for inconsistencies. That bit where you've copied and pasted, and you pasted it twice, but you can't see it because you get blind after you've read it 5 times. And before you read through your draft, before submitting it, go back and read the question. Make sure that you have answered the question as set rather than what you think is being asked. And again, that thing, risk and reward. There is a reward in terms of the funding. That's attached to risk. Think about whether what you're asking for is reflected in the degree of risk that you're proposing. So you need to be able to evidence or at least explain where your risks are and why that aligns. At which point, and slightly ahead of schedule, even though I dragged my feet as much as I could, we're going to go to questions and answers. Now, hopefully somebody's been taking down questions online, but I'm going to open the floor to those in the room. So questions for myself, for Amy, for Tony. Fire away. Yes, sir. Oh.
Good morning. So my name is Nick Kitchen. I'm CEO of a company called Cumulus Energy Storage. I see the budget for the composition is 10 million. In the late stage, there's up to 5 million for per project. If you're able to, can you let us know what the range of grants that have been actually offered in previous programs? What's the scale of those? Is it from 50k to 5 million or somewhere in between?
I'll defer to Tony on that one.
So yes, we do obviously fund a range. A lot of our projects are in the mid-stage because you can get... Oh, okay, thank you. So a lot of our projects that we fund are in the mid-stage because it is up to 1.5 million. So as you say, the large-scale projects, when you have only 10 million, can be quite tricky. But remember, that is £5 million costs. So late-stage projects is a 45% grant rate. So you will only get less than 2.5 million, so it is still feasible. I can find out the actual splits, and I can talk to you in the break if that's possible. But yes, we have just funded, I think, 5 or 6 late-stage projects through our Round 8 Blue Zone. So we do fund a lot of late-stage projects now. We realise that's where a lot of the high-scale impacts are going to come from, kind of your TRL 7+. So yeah, we do fund those.
And if I may ask a supplementary, how does the balance of early, mid and late stage work out? Is it a portfolio approach, or is it just based on the quality of applications before the assessors?
So it's mainly quality of applications. Obviously, we talked about that portfolio balancing earlier. That mainly comes through technology area and challenge area, Ayrton Fund challenge area, and country focus. So that's where the balancing usually comes in rather than stages.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room? Oh, yes, lots. Great. Gentleman across here.
Yeah, good morning. It's possible to explain in few words what's the difference between mid and late stage in terms of the development that is expected? Thank you.
Easiest way to put it really is, are you familiar with TRL levels? So kind of 4 to 6, essentially, we would expect some sort of testing and demonstration on a smaller scale. A late stage project would be a full scale demonstration, you know, possibly in a rural area, you know, in a village with 150 people. So, you know, you might put, for instance, a mini grid then fully operational and kind of doing all the monitoring and testing. Yes, the late stage is 7+. Yeah.
Great. So. Just here.
Hi, good morning. This is Jyoti from Green & Co. Is there any benefit to form consortium from more than one countries for the same project to demonstrate?
Seems to be answering them all, Tony. Do you want to come up here?
That's fine. As Jonathan mentioned, it's a benefit if it's a benefit to you. You need to pick your consortium quite well. For instance, one of the things that we probably didn't mention earlier is if your project is focused in India, there needs to be a secondary country. So, for instance, you may have a project that is focused on India and Bangladesh. So you would have a partner from Bangladesh and possibly a partner from India. So that would obviously benefit your consortium. I wouldn't say there's any rationale of just picking people from specific locations to build a wide-scale consortium if it's not needed. If they add benefit to your project, then brilliant. If not, I wouldn't say go looking for other people in different locations.
This lady here, proximity to microphone, and then Alistair.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lindy Moyo. I am from World Vision UK. I've got 2 questions. I think mainly for Emmy. You mentioned the percentage of funding. Is it possible just to maybe walk us through or elaborate the level of percentage funding for the various organizations? That is one. And attached to that, I think that will maybe speak to issues around match funding. I'm supposing we work with a number of organizations, and in some instances, if they are local, we have had instances where we are looking at how we can support them with match funding. So that is something that is important for us to know at this stage. Thank you.
Sorry, there was a slide on that, but I can't identify it.
It might be that slide, but I can go into a bit more detail. So for the eligible project costs are up to 70% if you're a micro or small organisation, 60% if you are a medium-sized organisation, and 50% if you are a large organisation. And if you're research participation, it's maximum 50 in early stage and then 30 in mid and late stage. And if you have more than one research organisation within the consortium, that maximum percentage is split. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you were to have two universities included, for example, the maximum would be 50% for both. Does that make sense? Yes, but of the total cost, they can only be 50. Am I saying that correctly? Yes. So, yes, universities and research organisations will get 100% of their cost. But in the context of the project, if they were on an early stage project, they would only be able to claim 50% of the total project costs, but they'd get 100% of that, potentially 50%, if that makes sense. That is 100% as well of the cost, of their cost.
Sorry, can you repeat the question for the people online?
Yes, sorry. The question was around charitable organisations as well, and charities will get 100% of their costs in the same way as universities get 100%. And the second question I have forgotten. Would you be able to repeat that? That's okay.
Yes, no, that's fine, because in terms of the level of the percentage funding, that would speak to the match funding requirements of the partners. So if it's up to 70%, then we're looking at 30% level of match funding.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So for the benefit of those online who can't hear that, we're just describing the levels of funding, which are elaborated in the slides and,
yes.
and certainly on the web pages for the competition.
Yes, so there's a full breakdown online as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. This gentleman here.
For the experimental development projects, you're particularly keen to encourage the testing of business plans and business models. What are the financial rules around income that comes from that? Because you can't test a business model without asking people to pay. Can that, A, can you get it? B, does it have any impact on the amount of funding you receive? And C, can that be evidenced as part of your contribution in kind, your top up?
So there's an A, B and a C there. I can remember A. Are you allowed to earn money during the delivery of the project? And I've heard that question before, so I know that's yes. B and C I can't remember,
well, then
but I'm going to defer to Tony.
Does it have any impact on the grant that you received? Does it, if you earn £10,000, do you get any reduction in the funding that the Energy Catalyst gives us? And the third part of the question was, does that 10,000, can that contribute to evidence that you can support the missing 30, 40, 50% of the funding for the project? So if you say, I've got £1 million project, but 300,000 of that is going to be earned during the project, hence I'm covered.
Right.
So yeah, I think as Jonathan alluded to, so A, no issues if you make sales within the project, so that isn't an issue. That is actually one of the KPIs that we will ask if you are successful anyway, so that's fine. B, no, it doesn't have any impact on it. And C, if I remember correctly, no, that's not really how it works. So you will be asked to provide kind of the match funding element before the project starts. You obviously probably won't make the sales until partway through the project or at the end of the project, depending on when you've actually, you know, got your kit over there and deployed it on the ground and actually set up the business model. So yeah, that wouldn't be possible to say, you know, I made 300K, so that could that go towards my project costs or anything like that.
Great, thank you. Have we had any questions online? Just while we take the mic. Oh, thanks, Tony.
There is a couple of questions online that are similar. It's probably one thing that we didn't cover that well. But you can apply for more than one grant. So I don't think we mentioned that anywhere. But your organisation can lead on more than one grant if you want. You can also be a collaborator. The only kind of thing to say there is, if you are successful in 3 projects, when we do our due diligence, we will obviously ensure that you have the resources to deliver all 3 projects. So yeah, that is kind of one of the questions that has been asked a couple of times online, just in case anybody was wondering in the room.
Great. Yes, we've got one here and we've got one at the back as well.
Hi, it says on the mid project that you can start from April 24. So can you actually start before that with R&D and so forth? The mid-stage project says April 24, starting from.
Yes. I think I know the answer, but I'm not paid for providing the the technicalities. So, Tony.
So it's from April 24. So that's the earliest you could start. Yes.
So, well, that won't be paid.
No, not paid, but is that, you can all add that all into it. So you're starting mid stage April 24, but you've done so much work to get to a certain point. That's all fine.
So are you saying that you would?
We're not starting a whole new project, are we, from April 24? We have something existing.
Yes.
Mid stage. So.
Yeah. So you'd want to allude to that in your application and say, on building on work done to this stage, we will do this block of work, which will constitute our project. I'm trying to think of another way of putting that. No, I think that's...
Yeah, I think by saying that you are building on something, as long as you make that clear in the application, it will then be assessed upon on what you say. Yeah.
Don't have to start with a blank piece of paper. Absolutely not. We're looking for people who have been developing things up to this point and perhaps need a discrete block of funding in order to overcome a hurdle. Gentleman right at the back in the blue coat.
Come on, this way.
Thank you. So my name is Alan and from Asymmetric Outcome. So I have three questions, but mainly in one sentence. So the first question is to know how many people do assess each application. The reason why I'm asking this is because in previous application I've submitted, I received like a confusing feedback. So one assessor will say, this is a wonderful idea. And then the other assessor will say, this is a pile of nonsense.
Right.
So,
thank you.
That's the first question. And then the second question is that right now, this is an innovative competition. So let's say I am an engineer, so I mainly focus on technical aspect of problems. Right now, there is almost like a side business that's developed of people writing application. And how do we compete against those? Because we are technical minded, and then we are facing people who are literally spending hours and hours writing lovely poetry.
Well, so on the number, is it 5 for Energy Cat?
Yeah, so there are 5 assessors, and we do appreciate that sometimes feedback can be a little bit we do a lot of work trying to match up specific assessors with specific applications. So it's really important, and I'm not saying this is something you might have done before, but in our application form it asks kind of what Ayrton challenge / what technology area that you are focused on. Really important that that is right, because that is the kind of assessor that will be placed against it. And if somebody doesn't get it, that's unfortunately how it goes sometimes, and that's why we have 5 assessors. Sorry about that.
On the poetry versus engineering question, I have served as an assessor. You can spot the ones that are professionally written. It's not necessarily an advantage. We want to hear the authentic story, not something that's designed purely to impress. So one failing that sometimes comes through is that the grant writers don't fully understand your technology and can't explain what it is as well as you can that you're addressing. The flip side of that, of course, is if you can't tell a good story, if you don't have that narrative, then it is difficult to convince an assessor. So I would never start with a grant writing agency, but I wouldn't count it out if you think that that's a failing or a weakness of yours. So that's a really fence-sitting answer, but if you believe that that's where you're falling down, then maybe consider getting somebody on board that can help. Yes.
So most of the question have a word limit, so there's only so much you can put there.
Yeah. That's true. Yes. Thank you.
Just want to respond to that a little bit and just ask you, Jonathan, as well. Do you still offer the service through KTN to support people with their applications?
That's a very good point, which I omitted to mention.
Because that's a halfway house.
Yes. So we at Innovate UK KTN, as part of our contract for delivering our element of Energy Catalyst, will review an application if you wish to send it to us before submission. We can't help you write it, and we're not there to proofread and check your commas and your semicolons, but we can help you to determine whether it's addressing the question as asked and whether it's telling the story. So yeah, please do talk to me afterwards and I'll give you contact details for that. Any more online questions? Anything come through from YouTube? If you're watching online and you've got questions, do bang them into the chat now. We've got a few more minutes before we're due to go to our coffee break. Otherwise, I'll just amend timings and we'll come back a bit earlier. Nothing coming through from the online chat. Okay, so we've obviously addressed all the issues expertly, and nobody's got any outstanding questions apart from this gentleman here.
Come around.
Yeah, hi, good day. My name is Dave, I'm also from Neverdick Limited. My question borders around the project size in terms of the early, mid, and late stage. So does that the figure say for the early stage where you have a maximum of 300,000, does that represent the project grant or the project cost? So I need clarity around what that figure represents when you say project size. Is it the grant part or the project cost, overall project cost part? Thank you.
No worries. So the figures that were outlined are the total project costs. So yeah, I think the best way to phrase it, and do correct me if I say it terribly, is that depending on your business size, you'll get a percentage of the cost as your grant. So, so if you are an SME and you are eligible for 70% grant based off the project cost, and your project cost was £100,000, you would get £70,000 as your total project grant. I guess following on from that, if you are unsure of whether or not you'd fall maybe into early or mid, depending on the size of your project, yeah, I think it's best, and again, you might want to elaborate on this, but best to apply into the one that you think is best for you. So if you are on that sort of border and not really sure which is best, yeah.
Thank you very much. That's quite clear. So as a follow-on, in reading the eligibility requirements, I saw a place where you said that the project can be led by a UK company or international. But also coming here, I'm seeing that it's like for you to be the administrative lead, it must be a UK-based company. So can you clarify? So my question here is, can an international company be the administrative lead for any of the stages, or is there a particular stage that it must be a UK company, while another stage it can be an international company?
So for admin lead, it has to be a UK-based company across all stages, yeah. And then we have, it might be beneficial to go back to the slide on the admin and technical leads, but the technical lead can be from anywhere in the world. So in theory, you could have 2 leads, but if you wanted to be both, if you are a UK organisation leading on the admin side of things, so I think it's 2 more slides along, please. Yeah, so the technology lead can also be the same UK company as the admin lead, but if you are a technology lead and you are an international organisation, you cannot be the administrative lead. So hopefully that makes sense. All of that is available online and we'll circulate it as well, but hopefully that's clarified it a little bit.
Okay. This is great. We've got follow-on questions.
Yeah, it's a follow-on question. Just to clarify on the UK a registered organisation for the admin lead, is it correct from the package online then that it should be a UK registered organisation that is a profit-making business, or that just doing commercial activities that give it profit? Just to clarify, I need to clarify that.
Yeah. So if we go back a slide, please. So I guess in the early stage for the administrative lead, it can be a UK, it has to be a UK business, academic or RTO, but mid and late stage it's UK businesses only. Do you want to expand on that in regards to profit?
So I think the easy answer is in an early stage, it can be anybody. So it can be an academic or an RTO who aren't making profit. But when you come to a mid and late stage project, it would need to be a UK business. So whether they are turning a profit or not doesn't really matter, but they would obviously be a commercial entity.
Oh, and gentleman at the back with the cap on. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, just very, very quick. So for regarding the percentage of funding eligibility, this doesn't change with country. So either if it's UK or foreigner. So it's the same.
Same.
Yeah.
So that the question is whether the percentage of funding varies between countries, and it doesn't.
No, which is the same. So if you, for instance, work with a Nepalese company and it's a university, they will still get 100% like our universities will get. So, yes.
Great. Gentleman at the back in the cap and the white shirt had his hand up. I'm not sure if he was waving to somebody or he had a question. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Neku. I just want to find out if we'll get a copy of the slide, which you've been showing to everyone.
Absolutely. Everybody who's here, who's registered, and who is online, who has registered, so that we've got their contact details, will receive a copy of the slides, along with the links to the competition pages and the video outlining the application process. So yes, you will have all the information you've seen and more.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Everybody's looking expectant and parched, so I'm going to whiz back through the slides to... No, we've done that, we've done all that. Go away. Here, and there's an easier way of doing this, isn't there? Say that we have refreshments in the back of the auditorium where you came in. For those online, I don't know where your refreshments are, probably in the kitchen. Please grab a drink, talk to people, and come back in, yeah, we'll stick to this. So half an hour for networking and refreshments. Back in the room at 11:50, please, and back online at 11:50, should you choose to do so, at which point you'll hear about gender equality and social inclusion, that very important section of the application form and very important dimension to all projects. You'll also hear from some previous funding winners, and there will be the ability to pitch to everyone in the room and online. Thank you. great. It's really innovating to hear the buzz in the room. It's wonderful to see people talking and meeting new folk. So the coffee here was great. I hope that the coffee in YouTube land was equally good, or tea, or beverage of your choosing. Into the next session, we've got some really important news. I'm not going to say anything more about it because otherwise I'll steal Amy's thunder. So Amy, come and tell us all about this.
So just before we go into the gender equality and social inclusion section of this day, I wanted to highlight that Energy Catalyst Round 10 has some slight changes, the biggest one being the update to the marked questions. So gender equality and social inclusion was previously a scope question. It is now being marked. So we thought it'd be a good idea to just highlight this question. It's question 9 in the application form, and just goes through sort of how your project will help enable gender equality and social inclusion, and to score highly in this question, both gender equality and social inclusion will need to be addressed. So there's also an idea of what you need to outline, but I will then hand over to Charlotte, who will be going through in full what gender equality and social inclusion is and how it can be applied within Energy Catalyst projects. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning everybody. Hello to everyone online. Yes, so as Amy just said, this is now the section on GESI, gender equality and social inclusion. I'm Dr. Charlotte Ray, and I'm presenting on behalf of my colleagues at Gordian Development Services, Jiske de Gaalt and Whitney Pellman, who are currently, one of them of which is currently facing visa issues in Cape Town, South Africa. So I just want to start by giving a brief outline of what we're going to talk about today. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. There's a lot of information on the slides, but again, I'm around all day. The presentation's available online, and obviously we also will be providing support for GESI support for applications in this round. So you don't have to sort of try and take pictures or take notes all the way through. So just very briefly, organisations can apply for a share of up to 10 million for clean, affordable and secure energy. And as a requirement, each proposal needs to consider gender and social inclusion. Very broadly, you need to identify beneficiaries, describe how you will mitigate negative effects, provide a plan of how you're going to address this during the lifetime of your project and beyond, and then also explain how your project will encourage inclusion and equity. Now, what we have always said, I do a lot of gender work, so do my colleagues, is that you need to include GESI from the start. There's no point being able to cover up a few gaps here and there if we do not address the fundamental issues that occur from the start. So that's why when you're thinking of putting together your application, GESI is not just a standalone work package or a thought, it actually needs to be considered throughout the whole scope of your project. So in a nutshell, what is sort of GESI? It promotes equality of opportunities for people. It also allows them to fully participate in society and helps them to overcome various disadvantages. Now, social exclusion happens for a variety of reasons. It could be legal systems, land, markets, but it also could be cultural, social perceptions and attitudes in communities. But this is all often based on issues such as gender, location, occupation, race, religion, legal status, employment status, disability, you name it, there's going to be a whole range of exclusion criteria. This ultimately robs people of their dignity, their security, and the opportunity to lead a better life. And as I've just mentioned, we need to address those root causes of exclusion and discrimination. Otherwise, it will be impossible for us to understand what those sustainable solutions are. So why does GESI matter for your energy catalyst application. So it addresses the unequal power relationships between men and women and different social groups. It ensures or highlights equal rights and opportunities, and it also addresses the need to rebalance those power relations. And we need action and outcome-oriented goals in your EC projects to ensure that we actually address the overall SDG 7 goal to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Now, we will talk about, when Jezi, we talk about gender an awful lot, especially when women. But I just want to highlight this image on the presentation about inclusion and equity. So if you look at the first image, if we treat people equally, they'll get the same support. But actually, that doesn't necessarily empower or actually help people overcome exclusion. But actually in the second image, if we give different groups, parts of society, different kinds of support, different tailored support, then they actually then have equal access. So this is them now being treated equitably as well as being treated equally. So just very quickly, just back to what Amy just said, you know, the joys is that Jezi is now back to being a scored question rather than a scope question. So again, you need to write down how your project will enable gender equality. You need to score highly, and there is a minimum pass criterion that has been set for this specific question. And again, just to reiterate, because I think repetition is good in this point, so you need to outline your disadvantaged groups and how they will be engaged. The barriers to gender equality and social inclusion in your chosen regions. So understanding the context of the place where you're deploying, implementing your technology. What actions will you be taking through your project to identify, to address these barriers? How the energy innovation will enable greater Jezi support, and highlight any negative impacts that your project could have and how you will mitigate them. The also joyous news is that you have to do all this in 400 words. So just to bear all of that in mind, an additional challenge for everybody. Though I do want to point out also at this stage that in the application process, of course, we discourage obviously repetition, but there are opportunities throughout various different questions where you can also address Jezi within that. So for example, when you're discussing your project team, your consortia, when you're discussing project legacy, those different questions will also provide opportunities for you to reiterate and highlight those Jezi opportunities that you're going to bring into your project. So we wanted to start with about inclusion, and inclusion needs to become the norm. We talk about Jezi, and so often, quite rightly, we talk about gender equal women. But actually, gender is only forms one part of inclusion. And we need to start getting our heads around that actually inclusion more broadly needs to be brought into the conversation. So obviously, not only is Jezi a requirement for the Energy Catalyst project, but actually for big global development funding, T funding, Ayrton funding, ODA funding, inclusion actually is becoming the norm, which goes beyond gender. So obviously, just as an example, SDG 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think there are also 3 more as well, they all have inclusion, some form of inclusion in their goal. So actually, in order to achieve these goals, we need to be actively thinking about and actively participating in inclusion. So also at the same time, there are also, like I mentioned, multiple dimensions of social inclusion. It's multidimensional, it raises these questions. So why is it included? Who does it include? When are they included? What are the actions? How do we start to address this? Whose terms are they addressed on? And obviously this diagram here, you know, it can be a whole host of things. It can be women, it can be men, it could be elders, it could be youth, disability groups, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, location. You know, the list goes on. Also, just to point out in your 400 words, we don't expect you to address all of this as part of that, but actually actively looking at a specific goal, a specific group of people is very important. It can incorporate different dimensions, but it is not we're going to look at all groups in society, actually sort of really focusing on the specific group that you want to include and incorporate and why may also be beneficial. And just as a sort of a quote, social inclusion can be a goal, it can be a process or an outcome in pursuit of development opportunities. So it is not sort of a one-size-fits-all approach. So just quickly, because I think it's also important that, you know, I think when we talk about GESI, like I've mentioned, we do focus on gender and women, which is not a bad thing. It is a great place to start. But let's unpack this a little bit more. You know, women and men, they experience development and poverty differently. Inequalities persist around the world, different regions, contexts. Social spaces have different ways of thinking about GESI, how they address it. So actually these need to be actively thought of and being seen as sort of this changing circumstance that we need to start to address. But at the same time, we need to recognise the important contributions that women, for example, make in society as leaders, as carers, as decision makers, stakeholders, etc. And there is ample evidence out there to actually women being catalysts of change and actually really steering long-term successful development solutions. And again, it's not just about equality. It is also about equity and giving women and women the platform to engage in ways of leadership, for example, that bring in their expertise to the table, not just as beneficiaries, not just as the low-hanging fruit. Actually, different women groups in society play different roles. Actually, it's not just them as we are going to engage them and they're beneficiaries. What roles do they actually bring within the technology you're deploying in these contexts? So again, just to reiterate, gender is not just about women. You know, it is about the social, behavioural and cultural attributes, expectations and norms associated with being female, male and female. But there's also a focus on women because historically they have been disadvantaged. So when we think about energy, for example, men and women use energy extensively, yet benefits and burdens are felt differently and are not equally distributed. You know, there is, for example, uneven representation in decision-making processes within energy organisations. I think from the round 9, I had a quote or a statistic that actually only 11% of patents in the renewable energy sector, only 11% of patents are actually led and spearheaded by women, which is, you know, shockingly low. And these are the sort of things that we need to start to address. And we also, like I said, we need to start to understand that there are diverse sort of gender inequalities across different regions and geographies and spaces. But again, gender equality, gender equity, it makes business sense. You know, like we said, they make up half the population. There is ample evidence to prove actually the role and the benefits that women bring to the energy sector. So we need to start incorporating this at the very start of our energy catalyst proposals. So yes, for your projects to have maximum impact, you need to account for GESI. I said it is central to funding, development funding, the Energy Catalyst Programme, the T Programme, the Ayrton funding programme. These all mention GESI as core fundamentals to their programmes. Women, men, different groups, they all have different needs. So actually it's not a one-size-fits-all. When we're thinking about this in writing our applications, we need to be thinking about the different needs and roles of each different group and actually how we can start to address this. We also know that in order to achieve sustainability, we need to empower all society. All groups need to be empowered. Now, again, we're not expecting you to empower every single person in society, but actually being able to address the root causes of a specific group or gender, for example, as part of your project starts, goes a long way. And so again, I just want to reiterate that this is not an afterthought. You now need to be thinking about gender. How is it incorporated into your project from now? Who's going to be involved? How are they going to be involved? So one of the ways in which my colleagues and I, and across the board, well, let's think about GESI mainstreaming. How do we think about this? Because one of the questions we often get asked is, how do we start to think about gender? I think some of the support that I've provided before, quite openly, I've had emails from male CEOs being like, we are an all-white male company wanting to do gender. We want to do better. We want to be able to address this, but we don't know where to start or how we can do this. So this is something that we have provided support on previously. And one of the things we suggest is actually putting together a very basic toolkit, and that is just, in some ways it's a thought process. It's about thinking about the context in this preparation stage. So who are we looking at? Are we looking at men, women, youth? What groups of society are we looking at? Let's do a context analysis and assessment of that in our chosen geographical spaces. And then we need to put together an action plan in that design phase. How are we going to address these issues? How are we going to do it? Who are we going to do it with? And then it's about implementing that throughout the duration of your project. And then, in some ways, sort of quite importantly, it's about monitoring that, evaluating that. If you are a successful Catalyst project, you will be assigned a monitoring officer and you will have quarterly meetings. Those quarterly meetings, for example, can be quite important milestones for you to address some of this and monitor and evaluate some of these milestones. But again, I think as a project consortia together, let's think about actually how we start to monitor and evaluate these GESI goals from the start. And again, just very briefly, what is a GESI action plan? What does it involve? And again, it details the constraints and opportunities for different groups in society, and that then really comes through that contextual phase that you have done at the very beginning of your project. One of the things that's really important is that agree on a goal. What is your GESI goal? What do you want to achieve between the start and the end of your project? And actually, how will then that project seek to improve on that beyond the scope of your project? And again, just as that point one says, there is a whole host of information out there. World Bank, Energia, UN, there is a whole host of resources that you can look at online to be able to start to understand how you can put together an action plan. It doesn't obviously start and end with Charlotte Ray and Yiska, for example. So I would implore you at the start of your project to start looking at what a GESI action plan is, what a toolkit is, and actually start to then adapt on that for your own project. It's also important to have a set of GESI responsive actions that will address the needs of vulnerable groups. And again, what are the needs of these groups? How will you mitigate any negative impacts? What are the potential negative impacts? And this is really, really important. And you can do that through various planning activities or implementation activities, etc. It's also important about the institutionalization of GESI mainstreaming in the project or organisation. So look at your project consortia. As Jonathan highlighted in his previous presentation, what is the makeup of your consortia? What expertise do they bring to the table? What is your GESI footprint in that respect? Where are different groups in positions of leadership, for example, or technical expertise? Are local partners treated equally and equitably across the project as a whole, or are there discrepancies? We always say, let's start at home, for example. So let's have a look at that project consortia. Also, equally, look at your own companies and your makeups. Do you have a corporate policy, GESI policy, or a gender policy? Is that something you would seek to improve, you know, as the project goes on? And again, things like we need performance indicators, sex disaggregated targets, which things that we can start to measure against beyond the scope of your project. Now, I'm a social scientist, so for me, it's not just about numbers, but also I appreciate that actually having statistics and that sort of data is very important to start to understand actually how we look at GESI. We also need development impacts, and it's actually very important, as I've just sort of mentioned, that we should be designing a monitoring and evaluation framework to track these activities. Again, it can be a work package as part of your project, but actually, how does GESI relate to other work packages? How are they linked? So on the aspect of GESI, you know, M&E, as we know, is often given insufficient attention. It is often a task required by funders and creates additional work. You know, we're in, you know, Q4 of a 12-month project, and you're like, great, let's think about monitoring and evaluation. And you realise you're going to run out of time very, very quickly. So actually beginning to think about that throughout each quarter of your project, or however often you decide to, is going to be very important. So when it comes to the end of the project, it doesn't seem as this overwhelming task. We can also be really clear and really honest about, well, project leaders, company executives, especially those based in the global north, for example, sometimes don't see gender, don't see GESI. They don't, it's often forgotten in projects. It's a byproduct. It's something that we focus on. And, you know, it's not always warranted the attention that it actually deserves. And that's something that needs to be fundamentally changed. As I've just mentioned, we need to look at the makeup of our project consortia to give us a basic understanding of organizational structure and corporate approaches, because that's going to be key to then how you deploy your technologies in these communities. If actually those structures are not in place in the project consortia, that actually we might find that there is a gender blind gap when we're starting to deploy these technologies in communities. We also need to equally engage with partners in country. I know, am I right, Amy, that in an early round, you don't necessarily have to partner with an in-country organisation. Now, in the mid to late stage, when you're testing, of course, and deploying technologies, there is a requirement to partner with in-country organisations. But I would say that actually, even from the start, if we're thinking about GESI and we're thinking about quality and equity, we need to be working with partners in these countries that we're working in to begin with. You know, there's only, you know, I've got X amount of years of experience and expertise working in energy in the global south, but that's not far enough compared to the local partners I work with who are dealing with this day in, day out, who have far more knowledge than I could ever have. And it needs to be those interactions and those engagements that we're seeking from the very start of our applications. We also need to be aware that actually in those contexts, there is also a gender blind, gender neutral response, and that women's voices and other groups' voices are not always heard. You know, women don't always put their hand up in the boardroom when it comes to project meetings because their male counterparts or their superiors have that voice for them, so their voices often get lost. If, for example, we're trying to look at needs of other groups, such as, for example, informal migrants, for example, or those who are disabled who have got varying needs and different roles in society, those voices might not always be heard. So it's really important to encourage, one, that partnership with in-country organisations, but actually being able to think creatively of ways that all of those voices are heard. As I've said, you know, gender disaggregated data is helpful, but it doesn't tell the entire story. So actually, how can you start to tell this story differently? How can you implement things that actually just don't say, we employ 50% women, or we aim to employ 50% women? That tells me one side of a story. It doesn't tell me the rest. And again, GESI monitoring and evaluation can be costly, and appropriate budgets need to be set. Like, let's not, you know, I understand technology costs are high, overhead costs are high, but if you're looking at 80% going to a UK partner of your budget and 20% then going to local partners, and then those numbers start dwindling, and then realizing that we don't have the expertise in country, that is an unequal relationship. We need to set time and budgets accordingly to what we're going to do. And I think that's really important, and I'll come back to that just very briefly at the last slide. I'd like to give an example of GESI Impact, for example. Alistair, you might recognise this. This is part of a project, an EC6 project I was previously part of. It was productive use of DC solar power in Africa to improve the quality of rural life, led by Africa Power. And just to give an example of some of the GESI activities that took place, so there was specifically designed a corporate gender policy, both in the UK and for the company in Tanzania. There was a creation and a delivery of a bespoke training for specifically female agents of solar home systems in Tanzania. As a result, there was an increased proportion of female employees across the sector, technical, admin and leadership, and also an overall increase of female agents. But also at the same time, beyond those figures, there was a greater understanding of the roles that women and other groups wanted to be part of and their associated limitations. For example, there was a realization that actually women were sales agents, and this slide here was developed by our partners, Solar Sister, providing women bespoke, tailored training about how to maximize their sales. But at the same time, we realized that women wanted to do other roles, not just be a sales agent, that female youth were really keen to become technical installers of these technologies. But actually there was serious sort of limitations. So benefiting from additional technical training and that bespoke support for them allowed that increase of technical agents to happen. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been aware of it. Likewise, limitations. Now, this has sort of gone on, but previously there was collection agents that would be part of collecting money for these solar home systems over a period of time. But actually, women didn't necessarily want to be part of that because of the distances they'd have to travel, the time they'd have to be away from their families, and actually it was a limiting factor for them. So actually, different women in this particular context had different needs, but through this training and through this project, we were able to start to identify those needs and not just say we've increased the number of female sales agents. So beyond the scope of this EC6 project, we've now really been able to start to understand the needs of different agents and actually how we can start to address them, especially going into leadership positions. And again, this was not a project I was part of, but this was, again, a specific project, Mopo hubs, for example, providing households with energy and e-mobility. There was a specific GESI strategy and a recruitment of female-specific agents. In country, there was appointed a full-time gender empowerment officer that was dedicated to mentoring and monitoring women and tailoring the support that they needed. Again, they created this bespoke empower training program. It says will achieve 50%, but I think that has been surpassed now because this is obviously from a few rounds ago. And then it's also recently launched its all-female hub in Sierra Leone. And also, this is important to say that they've been able to continue that work across various energy catalyst rounds, similar to the slide before, which was originally part of a EC4 program, then went to an EC6 program. So again, just to sort of really hit home, there needs to be a strong GESI commitment, there needs to be a clear GESI action plan, we need to be thinking about this in the design stage, moving beyond disaggregated data, and we want project-appropriate indicators and outcomes. We want to be able to have an effective monitoring and evaluation framework and also be able to communicate that effectively throughout the project consortia. And again, I just think consider GESI in your work as an opportunity to do better. So again, I want to, before I end, what is our role? What is GDS, our role in supporting round 10? So GDS is a support company for the energy climate sectors. We have provided support for round 9 and we will be providing support this time round. We support a range of stakeholders, government, private sector, academia, communities. We specifically help to implement and design gender and socially inclusive projects. We're currently based, so I'm based here in the UK, based in South Africa, but collectively we've worked in over 23 countries in Africa and Asia. We will be on hand to support you in this phase. So if you are looking for support in question 9, we are able to support you in this. We will be able to have strategic discussions with you about how to increase your GESI capacity within your various bids, whether that's early, mid or late. We can help to outline a GESI action plan. We can sense check your current approach to GESI. So if you want to send us something that you've written and want us to have a look over it and provide advice. And we can also review GESI aspects of your draft application. So for example, if there are other sections of which you are incorporating GESI into it, for example, we are also able to make sense of that. This is the email address, but all of these details will be available online to do that. So you can email us directly or, for example, through the B2 Match platform, although which I've just got to work out how I do that appropriately, whether that's through us individually or whether that's organisationally. But I just implore you, for example, if you've already got a draft and you're looking for support, send that to us, or please provide a description of what you're looking to do, or what sort of support you would like, the technology area, for example, so we can try and provide the best support for you. And again, as I've sort of said, there are additional sources of support, the World Bank, Energia, ESMAP. These are just a start. These are things that you can start to read up on about actually how you would not necessarily just put your 400 words together, but actually how you would start to think about putting together a gender toolkit or an action plan. So very much in conclusion, mainstreaming gender and energy catalyst will be better and more sustainable and successful for you. We need to translate this thinking into action. So it's one thing saying that we want to do better and we're going to address women, we're going to help youth, but actually how are we going to do that? We need action on this. And like I said, this applies to the project team level as well as the process. Consider who you've got part of, have we got the dedicated expertise, positions of leadership, potential inequalities relating to additional needs and responsibilities? Do we have budget? And I thought it'd be interesting just to put these 3 pictures. So the first picture is of Whitney, our lovely colleague in Cape Town, who was supposed to be here today, but has had visa issues. Thank you, UK government. So she is actually has been unable to attend. But Whitney is not the only example of where, for example, the visa process takes time and costs to get our colleagues. So if we're thinking about putting together project meetings, demonstrations, for example, how can our, for example, in-country colleagues attend those meetings? What sort of budget will be needed, desired? What is the time that these things will take? And can we set appropriate budgets for that so actually all members can attend? Myself and my colleague Yiska have benefited from being based in the global north. Yiska is based in South Africa, but she is from the Netherlands. We've been able to benefit from being able to travel sometimes at the expense of our colleagues, and that's something that we want to actively try to address and ask Consortia to think about addressing as part of this. At the same time, Yiska and myself, that we have care responsibilities. So as part of your team in country or your beneficiaries, for example, what are the additional needs and responsibilities and roles that we play within the project? So actually, like I said, I actually had a baby 10 days ago, and I'm here because my colleague wasn't actually able to be here, but actually I'm not necessarily able to travel. Do I have the expertise in my in-country consortia to help support in that? Actually, at the same time, when we're talking about deploying our technologies, what are the varying societal needs that actually our beneficiaries, our disadvantaged groups actually have? How are we going to support them in this process throughout our project? And again, just in conclusion, that actually we need to be thinking about GESI at the very start of our process, at the very beginning. It shouldn't be an afterthought, and definitely not in isolation. We should not be thinking of it in a box, in a standalone box on its own. It needs to be incorporated throughout the entire process. That is me. Thank you. Feel free to write down the email address if you've got any questions. Like I said, we will be on hand to support you going forward. So thank you. I don't know. Is there any questions?
Well,
how long did I go over?
Are you staying for lunch?
Yes, I am.
Can I implore people to save their questions for Charlotte for lunch, because you always get your money's worth where Charlotte's involved. A fantastic presentation, which took a little longer than we were anticipating.
It's a social scientist in me, I'm afraid.
Can I just reiterate, Charlotte had a baby 10 days ago.
Thank you.
And I know that half the population, or part of half the population, has babies, but 10 days on, and not a hint of baby brain. I know my wife was barely able to dress herself 10 days after giving birth to our daughter, so
she is here. Sorry, by the way, I've incorporated my husband. My daughter, and my husband is currently on baby duty, so in another room. But thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charlotte. That's amazing. And you've got the contact address there. Charlotte will be around over lunch if you've got specific questions around gender equality, social inclusion matters. You have heard what Energy Catalyst is. You have heard how to go about building a team, how to do an application, what to write about gender equality and social inclusion. What is it really like to participate in one of these projects? So we've invited two previous award winners to come and speak to us today. First up, I've got Ilan Adler, and I'll let him introduce himself and his organisation and what he did with his funding.
Okay, can you hear me okay, everyone? All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon. So my name is Ilan Adler. Sorry, I put the slides a bit last minute together about our project, because initially it was going to be without slides. So basically, I represent two organizations. I work for UCL, University College London, and I also am the founder of Innovate Solutions, which is a startup. So basically, the project we did, and you will see the time frame, it started in 2020, in that ominous year of the pandemic. So it was an extremely unusual project. It was our Energy Catalyst 7 early stage project. And we were successful in the application, but of course it was all planned a year in advance. We had all the meetings with the consortia partners. I had traveled to Ethiopia as part of one of these brokerage visits. I think Jonathan was there, probably. I don't remember. But it was Energy Catalyst 7 brokerage visit to Ethiopia, and that really helped make all the links, all the connections, including with one of the UK partners. So those visits are highly recommended if you would like to make more in-country networks. So we set up the project, and it was successful. It was great. But then we were granted the money on the beginning of the project, the 1st of April, right in the middle of the beginning of the lockdown. So enormous challenges to run a project like this, but we still succeeded. We had to extend it almost for a year. It was meant to be 1 year, ended up being 2 years. But I'll give you a bit of a synopsis of what the project was about, and that might be useful. So basically, we developed between UCL and Innovate Solutions, which is a spin-out from the university, a passive solar pump. So it's a solar pump that can work without any moving parts. There's no solar panels involved. It's just based on heat and a whole bunch of thermal principles. So we have a UK patent, and now one filed in several regions, several countries of the world as well, a PCT. And we thought that we would start deploying in Ethiopia. It was early stage, do field trials. We integrated it with something called thermoelectric generators. So we figured out, well, there's a lot of spare this is for you engineers in the room, a lot of spare heat in these units where we're collecting a lot of solar heat. Can we also produce some electricity with the heat directly through something called thermoelectric devices? And we tried that in the lab. That was brilliant. So the plan was to assemble these prototypes that would give people the solar water pumping with these very low-cost pumps that could be built in-country with local materials, integrated with the thermoelectric generation, so they could have some spare electricity for charging phones and other lights, etc. And the idea was to deploy these in Ethiopia. So we did manage to do a lot of the UK work, and we did manage to send prototypes to Ethiopia as well. But it all had to be done remotely, which was very, very tricky because, of course, we weren't there, so we had to send parts. It was very, very much delayed. So we had to rethink a bit the project due to the pandemic, start working virtually, and then also using in-country NGOs and partners that were brought in to support the team at the university to start doing surveys, because we had to do a bunch of surveys, and these were actually quite successful. So we went around lots of communities around the Bahir Dar area, Lake Tana. That's a beautiful part of Ethiopia, very much impoverished, and to try to collect a better understanding of where would a solar pump fit in. And that was quite useful for us. Some people already had solar pumps that were working sometimes, and sometimes were not, so we wanted to understand that a lot better. And we deployed the prototype there, as you can see, a bit clumsy, but that was in Bahir Dar University. To a certain extent, it was successful despite none of us being able to actually travel to the region, which had, as I said, enormous challenges. So our schedule ended up, our very ambitious schedule, it was supposed to be 1 year, ended up being dragged on with timelines being shifted, but we did manage to adapt. And one very nice news is that at the end of the project, only last year, we got some follow-on funding from Cambridge University, and then our team was actually able to travel physically to Ethiopia, and now we have some funds to actually continue the work that we kind of left, that we couldn't really do the way we would have liked to do. So that work is now ongoing, back on track again, and that was a bit the summary of how it all went. So I'll leave it there if you have any questions or yeah.
Perhaps we can invite our next speaker, and then you can both address questions. You might have different responses to the same question. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
DJ.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Jonathan and Charlotte for the really amazing presentations, and Ilan, good to see that your project's still going. So I don't have slides, but I just want to talk a little bit about my experience, and hopefully I can be helpful to some of you that want to put in applications. So my company, Inclusive Energy, on the Jazzy theme, set out to make a smart meter for biogas digesters, small-scale biodigesters. The reason that we wanted to do that is because biogas is a largely undigitized market, and we've seen other markets in the energy access space, such as solar PV, that have completely transformed and become much more business viable through digitization. And we believe that that opportunity was there for biogas as well. And that product, a smart meter for biogas digesters, didn't exist. We also started our project in April 2020, so I've got the similar story to Ilan about how difficult that was. And what we ended up doing was pushing all of the field work back into 2022, so right at the end of the project, whereas normally we would have liked to do lots of field work at the beginning of the project. So it wasn't perfect, but we ended up being able to complete it on time and to budget. Now, the project itself, it had a mixture of technical and commercial challenges within it. I've already outlined why we did it from a business perspective, and I think that that's really important for people to think about. It's not just about engineering. And for us, we needed this funding because there are technical challenges. We weren't sure that we were actually going to be able to produce the product, but we knew that the market was there, and we wanted to be able to take a prototype into the field and start proving that. So, Jonathan's asked me to go through a few topics, so I will. And the first one is around forming the consortium, which of course he also talked about. The process that we went through for forming the consortium was we wanted organizations that would be able to help us with our commercial vision. We already had the vision. It wasn't that we were just blue sky thinking, trying to come up with a project to suit the funding call. We knew what we wanted to do, and we were looking for organizations to come with us on that journey. The quid pro quo for them is that the organizations we were looking for have impact goals, and we wanted to be able to help them do that. So specifically what we did is we teamed up with 2 organizations, one in Kenya and one in Uganda, whose job it is to promote biogas in those countries. And these are organizations that are quasi-governmental. They've been set up by a large Dutch NGO, and they're trying to get everyone in Kenya and Uganda to use biogas. So we went to them and said, we're digitizing the biogas sector. Do you want to work with us? It would make sense for you. And we need you as well. And it was just a really good partnership that way. We also brought in the University of Nottingham, because universities are really good in terms of having labs, facilities. They have all this expensive kit that we don't have, we couldn't possibly have had access to if it wasn't for bringing an academic in. So we brought them in as well. So there's 4 organizations in our consortium. The other things that we were looking for is that we didn't want competition around the IP. This was our idea. This is our prototype that we were taking into the project. We knew what we wanted to do to commercialize it, and we didn't want other companies coming in and owning a bit here or a bit there. We wanted it to be really clean, so that at the end of the project, we knew where we were going. Yeah, and then the other point is that we didn't want any partners in the consortium that weren't really bought into the idea. So it had to be people that whose sole focus was biogas. And we managed to find those. So I would say that's a tip. Don't partner up with people who are just looking for any old project. It has to be people who are dedicated to the field that you're working in. The next part is about the application procedure. And I would say that these are big applications. This is not a piece of cake. My kind of rule of thumb is that it takes me between 10 to 14 working days to write one of these. So if you don't have that kind of time, or can't make that kind of time, from me anyway, maybe not what Innovate UK and KTN say, but I wouldn't do it if you don't have that kind of time. The other point, Jonathan did say this, but under the questions in the application form, you've got the sub-questions. That's so crucial. They're telling you what they want to hear, and you've got to nail each one of those sub-questions. The applications are done on this platform called IFS, and I actually think it's pretty good, but I don't think that it's a good idea to try and write an application on there directly. We always work offline and then take it onto IFS later. A couple of things about application process is you may not win first time, but the feedback is really, really good. It's valuable. So if you do apply and you get feedback, go through it and try and use that for next time. Often I've heard loads of stories about people winning on the second or third time. So a tip about application, work with someone who's got experience with this specific platform and this specific call. You've got a much better chance that way. Next topic is getting started with the project. The due diligence process, once you've been awarded the grant, is actually quite extensive. So again, it goes back to who's in your consortium, who you're bringing on that journey with you. It's really important because you're going to need them for the due diligence process. A tip for this stage is try and pick partners that are likely to be solvent organizations, because you would be amazed how many times partners aren't, and they will fail the financial due diligence, and your project will be in trouble. And a tip on that, NGOs and universities tend to be less risky in that regard, because they get 100% funded, and certainly when it comes to academic institutions, the finances are going to be more secure, likely. Oh yeah, and then during this process, before you've actually started your project, but you do have funding, there's quite a few steps to go through. One of the things that I have done, having experienced Energy Catalyst projects several times, is I set one-on-one WhatsApp groups up with each partner and coach them through that process. Can't expect people just to be able to pick it up and do it themselves. So yeah, again, experience of the process is useful. Next, onto delivering the project and drawing down funds. I would just say that leading a project in Energy Catalyst is a big undertaking. So as the CEO of Inclusive Energy, I have never done that. Always got somebody else in the, we've been part of 3 projects now, one of which as lead. I've never been the principal contact for us because it takes too much time. So I would say either get a project manager, or ask somebody else in the organization to do it, if you're a CEO, not that everyone is. And then every quarter you'll have a check-in with the monitoring officer, and I actually think these are really good opportunities to just assess where you're at. Charlotte was talking about assessing the GESI at that point, but these check-ins are really fair, but it is tight. It's not one of those grant programs where you can get the money and do what you want. People will hold you to account. And then, as Ilan said, there is flexibility in how these projects are run, so I just think transparency is really important in this program. The monitoring officers tend to be super supportive, so you don't want to hide things from them. Just be honest, they'll help you reprogram or move costs around or whatever you need to do. So the outcome from our project was that we did actually produce this smart meter for biogas. It exists now. It's been sold in 26 countries. And we prototyped a bunch of software features that we hope to develop now. The project finished in April 2022. We've been working on these since then. And we also solidified connections in East Africa and doing much more work in that region now. And we have been able to move on to the next stage. So in Energy Catalyst 9, we've been awarded a late stage grant. So again, Energy Catalyst is really good for progressing through the phases. And we've been able to raise commercial investment as well. So just finally, a couple of overall tips for people that are looking to put in bids in round 10. Firstly, I would say rewatch Jonathan's presentation, because I don't know if you've ever been on this side of it, but there's a lot of pain in that presentation that you seem to understand how it works really well. So I think that's really, really good. I would also say, not everyone maybe agree with this, but I would say make the consortium as simple as it needs to be, because the more partners you have in a consortium, you're just adding complexity. So I know companies that have done projects by themselves really successfully. In my case, it was 4 companies, 4 organizations. That's okay, but you do see 8, 10 organizations. That's a lot of complexity. 2 other things. One is that everyone should be aware of the hub and spoke model. The money for these projects comes into the lead partner, and they have to distribute it. So that's an admin task that can be quite tricky. And you need to have admin capability in your organization to deal with it. And then also, cash flow is absolutely crucial for these projects. You get paid in arrears every quarter. So you might need 4 to 5 months of cash in your bank account to be able to do the project. That can create a lot of issues for smaller companies, including ours. And I think that I'll just leave it there. I'd like to say thanks to Energy Catalyst.
Don't run away. Have we got a microphone in the room? Roving mic? Somewhere? Thank you very much. Any questions for Ilan or Vijay? Yes, sir. The mic's coming to you.
I wanted to ask to both speakers if they were the technical lead, the admin lead, or both.
In this project that I was talking about, we were both, but I have been involved as a partner in projects as well. And that's way, way easier. It's actually not a good position to be in if somebody asks you to be.
Yeah, in our case as well, I led this project through the university, not through a company. So that's got good and bad things, and it's also a worthwhile tip. On the one hand, universities do get 100%, you know, they don't need the matching funds, but the admin and the bureaucracy added by having a big university like UCL is quite formidable. So that's something to consider. But yeah, we're both technical and admin as well. It's not a bad idea to separate them at times, if you can.
It is a bad idea to stand in front of the projector. Any more questions? Oh, lots.
Thank you for your presentation. This is Jeff from Engine. Just quickly, how much, I don't know if this is a good question or not, how much Energy Catalyst was helpful to get extra funding? Did you leverage this opportunity to get the match funding from equity investors? Have you had any experience about that?
Well, I can answer very quickly. In this particular case, because it was university-led, although we did have other industrial, so we didn't need that many, the match funding wasn't that big. So the company had enough funds to match fund. But we've applied to other projects where indeed you do have to fundraise or find other sources. And as Vijay said, the cash flow is critical. So it's something to consider. Those match funds can be quite a bit. So you have to keep that in mind when you're applying.
Whenever you say Energy Catalyst, you are successful winner, a lot of appreciation from the investors.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. You said, does that help you when investors fund? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We also have another government-funded grant at the moment that we're running, and it's very, very helpful because it gives them confidence. It's like saying, okay, you already have 80% backed by government funds in your project, so I'm going to put 20, but you know, they feel more comfortable than I'm just giving you some money to this little startup that nobody's ever heard of. So it's quite helpful, actually. Yeah, it is, but it's also tricky to leave it that late to your fundraising. When you actually need the money, you got to start the process early. I'll let you answer anything else.
I think you covered it, Ilan, but just to add, I think, it's very, very helpful at the beginning. If your company is new, then it's amazing to have a grant. If your company is 5 years old, then investors will be looking at your product roadmap and asking you, how relevant is this Energy Catalyst project to your growth plans? Then it's a different story. But at the beginning, it's amazing, and it'll help you raise money for sure.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Temitokwe Michael. I'm from Eco Synergy. You both came up and you said you've got no slides, and you were able to make your presentation. I actually saw this simplicity in both presentations, and that's quite amazing. I didn't know how you did that, but that was amazing. But the reason for saying that, Vijay, this goes to you. I see this, your project seems so simple. It looks so much like it's still, you're making your way already, and I'm so impressed, and I'm really happy to tap into this. But I say, like, your visions are looking so much like it's still at that incubation stage, despite of this opportunity. But there is so much benefit in that projection. Like, how did you manage to state your visions clearly? Because it's so clear, despite that it's looking so small, but it's so original, and it's just like, that was, I say, something is so unique about both of you. You came up, you said no slide, but you navigated the whole presentation down, and it's so beneficial. So how did you state your visions correctly? I mean, clearly to your investors, and you're able to get this?
Yeah, I think I see where you're coming from. My approach to this particular project and a couple of bids that I've done with my team since then is have one core of an idea that you're asking for money for. Now, of course, in any program like this, they want to see innovation, and there have to be stretch goals and things that might be possible and might not be possible. But it has to be based on something that's quite simple. So in this case, we had a prototype of this biogas smart meter, and all we were saying was, we want to take that to market. That's it. That's the project. So all of the detail around that is just detail that's fleshed out in the application. But the principle of the project was extremely simple. And overcomplicating that is probably to the detriment of any application. Does that make sense? Do you have any follow-up that you want to ask?
Anybody online asking any questions? Okay, well, oh, sorry, one more.
So my question is simple. Two questions, sorry. The first one is, what do you mean by biogas? Is it methane, propane, or what is it really? And then the second question is, how do you measure the impact of your project on the ground after working on it for like 2-3 years? How is that changing the life of the people down there?
Okay, well, the first question, we have a world expert on biogas here. I feel bad answering it, but yeah, methane that's created through anaerobic digestion. In terms of impact, well, impact, as Charlotte was saying in her presentation, is really hard to do, and it takes a lot of effort to measure impact. In our project, because we were so focused on getting the project done during COVID, we didn't do a very good job on impact monitoring, to be honest. We also have a B2B approach, so we don't work with the end users directly. So it is tricky.
Regarding our capabilities for the solar space, we can deploy mini-grid, micro-grid solutions. We also deploy solar home systems, or what you can call portable power solution. We have the capability to service the residential and commercial end users, whether it be rooftop solar system deployment or ground mount. As part of our ongoing Energy Catalyst Round 8 project, of which we are partnered to a project, we've also developed competence in community engagement and market research. That's quite interesting. So what is our aim for this particular Round 10 project? We are looking to champion the deployment of clean cooking, smart clean cooking, in rural areas in Nigeria, because we've come to understand that there are a lot of gaps and challenges with rural dwellers in accessing clean energy. A lot of them depend on firewood as well as charcoal for their cooking. We want to make it clean, we want to make it healthy, and we want to make it very socially responsible. So what's the objective today? We seek technology partners who will help us work on developing a very affordable, reliable, and clean cooking stoves in order to service the Nigerian market, which is about the largest market in Africa by size. Going on to the next slide, you can see some of the engagements and business solutions that we render. We've deployed captive power solution for telecommunication companies, for a telecommunication company in Nigeria. We're also currently developing our Round 8 sodium-ion battery technology with our lead partners here in the UK. We've participated in funding symposiums such as energy transition programs in Nigeria in the oil and gas space, where we also won an award. And we do a lot of exhibitions and demonstrations on our solar home systems. So we're a company with many parts, and we are willing and open to partner with any organization that wants to join us in transforming Africa's energy access. I don't know if I've exhausted my 2 minutes.
You have.
All right. All right, so thank you very much. My contacts are there.
Great. 2 minutes 50. So there's your target, you know. Let's see if we can keep to 2 minutes. So next up, Eco Synergy. There you are, sir. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Temitope Odetunde. I'm from Eco Synergy UK Limited. And I just want to introduce this company to you and what we do. Essentially, we are at the peak of taking power to Africa the way it is required. We are basically meant to liaise with not the government, but the individuals, the rulers, that is the sector we are looking at, and the communities at large. I am from Nigeria, so our priority is starting from Nigeria through the rest of Africa. One of our strategy is to strongly become the part of the community. We also have access in Malawi at the moment, and we are focusing strongly on agriculture. We are very interested in partners, business holders, and investors who are solely convinced that Africa is a major part that energy is being required of. We are manufacturers as well of wind turbine. We want to see how this product, not just saying, but also implementing this product over the existing alternative that the government in African regions has provided, and that is wind turbine. We are collaborating with Ayrton. These are manufacturers of wind turbine. We have been able to also implement a redesign of special wind turbine that is different from every other kind that has been used, so that this can supply large and very powerful volume of energy in this part of Nigeria, and also the operations into the rest of Africa. Two more differences that will make our wind turbine to become very attractive to our investors. One, the redesigning, which is having to do with structural analysis, and also the opportunity to have large area where this wind can, where the farm can be implemented, and this becomes a very powerful tool for any investors. This is what we do. Our value, that's the proposition, is very straightforward. Customer relationship is what we are into. When I say we are liaising with traditional rulers, not just the government coming into us, but also being part of the government and supplying this need to people, because this is what we understand it to be. Customer segment, organized speed decks, then travel, and the rest, which I've mentioned government organization earlier. This is our business model. We work with companies in sustainable development. Business owners like you, we are so much interested in what you want to do with us. If you see our vision very convincing, which I tell you, it is what is really happening in Africa at the moment. Energy is seriously required, and we really want to aim at getting this done as quick as we can. Our work is to, favors gender politics, I think, which she has been mentioning and talking about equity and the rest of all this. So far, so good. So basically, agriculture is the pride, and the tech in which this Africa agriculture is going to be sustainable is this supply and innovative idea in the wind turbine. In conclusion, this is exactly what we're looking for: networking, collaboration, funds, and we take it to the rest of it. Thank you very much.
I I could feel the italics, even though it wasn't written in italics there. Thank you. So a little bit of slippage on the clock there, but it was a full flow. So I think that's... a video pitch.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Elisha Caleb. I'm the founder and the CEO of Agrotech Plus. My team and I are currently on a mission to build a sustainable food system for Africa by leading innovations that reduce food loss and food waste. So I grew up in the farm in the Kenyan village with my mother, who is a smallholder tomato farmer. We worked very hard in the farm, but the joy was always dim during the pre and the post-harvest of our fresh tomatoes. This was basically attributed to the lack of access to mechanized technologies, such as the cold storage facilities for highly perishable food crops like these tomatoes. My mother had no choice but to sell these tomatoes at a very low farm gate price to any buyer to minimize the losses, or sometimes did not sell at all. I know if my mother had access to mechanized technologies, her profit would obviously double, making it easy to pay my school fees. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, 1.3 billion tons of food is lost every year across the globe. This contributes to up to 10% of the global green gas emissions. Where in Kenya, up to 45% of the total harvested food spoils due to the lack of cold storage. This program inspired us to start Agrotech Plus. Our innovation is a solar-powered cold storage preservation technology that extends the shelf life of perishable produce from the usual 5 days period to 21 days period. Handled with a digital market linkage platform that connects these farmers to food aggregators. This helps them to reduce the post-harvest losses, increasing their income up to 40% on average. The cold room accommodates fresh fruits and vegetables. Agrotech Plus offers farmers these solutions with a flexible pay-as-you-store subscription model. In the next 2 years, our solution aims at reducing post-harvest losses in our horticultural pilot community by 50%. Secondly, we are projecting to help farmers increase their income by over $1 million, boosting their local economy and reducing the food waste carbon emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, together with our 6 global partners, our diverse team, we invite you to join us on this mission to reducing post-harvest losses and basically to ensure long-lasting profit for our smallholder farmers across the sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
And the Oscar for Best Actor goes to... That was a very slick production. Yeah, well, thank you very much to Alicia for sending that. Next up, hopefully in the room, Anfani.
Hi everyone. It's going to be a little hard to follow that scenery at the back, but bear with me. So it's good to see everybody today. First of all, thank you, Amy and Jonathan, for this, and thank you to the gentlemen for your case studies. My name is Isiak Bolariwa. My friends call me Ish. I'm the founder of a company called Anfani. Now, Anfani is a Southwest. I've seen some Yoruba names in the building today. So Anfani is a Southwestern Nigerian word that means opportunity, benefit, and advantage. So what we do is we create an opportunity for small and medium-scale enterprises to take advantage of our platform for their benefit. Now, we call ourselves the energy broker for the unbanked. And the reason why we do that is because we develop strategic partnerships with renewable energy providers and financial providers as well to provide increased affordability to and access to renewable energy provisions. And in November last year, we were lucky to be part of the energy brokerage trip to Nigeria, which was a fantastic trip for us. In fact, we met Davar from Inclusive Energy, which was an amazing trip. Now, looking to the future, what are we looking to accomplish in EC10? We're intentionally generic here because we have a few projects lined up to apply for, but the key thing is we're looking for projects generally in the renewable energy space, obviously, but at the same time, our partners are very sub-Saharan Africa driven, right? So we're looking for projects in the sub-Saharan African space for now, for EC10, and we are thinking big, right? Someone asked a question earlier about, what makes your project work afterwards? So even if we are funding for the 3-year project, whether it's from Innovate or private funding, we are thinking bigger to make sure that energy solutions are economically viable in the long run, especially for those of us that, know about the electricity issues in sub-Saharan Africa. In terms of capabilities, we've done this for energy for the last 10 years. Our portfolio speaks for itself. We have project managed hundreds of millions of dollars of projects, thankfully successfully within cost and schedule, which is a great thing for us. Our team is quite vast in terms of project management and stakeholder management experience across board, particularly as far as sub-Saharan Africa is concerned, Western and Eastern Africa. Now, what are we looking for particularly? Like I mentioned earlier, those that are looking to go into the SSA markets, you don't necessarily have to be a renewable energy provider. You could be an energy provider, you could also be a financial provider. We have a brokering platform where we're looking to onboard our partners in the long run as well, where you're able to, we'll handle customer acquisitions for you, and we give you a few terms and conditions that you have to live by, to provide the highest quality of services to our customers, whether it's financing for energy or energy provision itself. So lastly, if you're a company focused on products or services looking to innovatively solve SDG 7 issues in sub-Saharan Africa, come talk to us. I think this QR code takes it to my LinkedIn page, I'm not sure, but whichever way, there are some cards here as well. So thank you all for your time, and thanks again for putting this together. Appreciate it.
Great stuff. Somebody owns this. There you are, sir.
Good afternoon, all. Existing solar asset owners across the globe are facing challenges to uplift their production of their assets. And they are largely due to a lack of data-driven decision-making process. We at Green & Co, we have developed a systematic approach to optimize assets, and we have provided some pilot project across different continents and with an uplift of 8% generation gain that we have demonstrated. The pragmatic approach that we take across different services, and that really ultimately de-risk project investment into renewable sector, particularly solar battery storage projects. And that ultimately help additionally decarbonizing the sector and gain investor confidence to reinvest into green sector. We are a technical advisor with a service portfolio of over 7 gigawatt in last 5 years since we have started in 15 countries. So we are mainly focusing on one, solar digitization services. We developed some algorithms. These days they call AI and machine learning algorithms, but in simple sense, they are a bunch of mathematical formulas specific to this particular sector. And our capabilities, we have provided a pilot project of a 300 megawatt project in India, and that has resulted an uplift of 20 million pounds for that portfolio. And that has also additionally offsetted about 30,000 tons of CO2 by uplifting this generation. With our traditional route of technical advisory services, we have supported over 600 million pounds of transactions, so whether it's technical or commercials. And our founders, that myself, I sit in the IEC or British Standard Committee. Here is the QR code of my LinkedIn profile. What we are looking at is partnering with, particularly we operate into B2B sector, whether they are developer or asset owners or EPC companies to partner with, particularly to offer these asset optimization services. We call it PVAPM, PV Asset Performance Management. Thank you.
Terrific. Remember, everybody here is staying for lunch, I hope. So seek out these presenters and ask them more about their presentations, unless, of course, they've answered all your questions. PAM Africa. Oh, is this another video? It is. If you can't see it, there's a little face in the bottom corner here.
Good day, everyone. My name is Dr. Patrick. I'm the founder and CEO of PAM Africa. A little bit about myself. I spent over a couple of decades in the UK. I'm relocated to Africa, where I'm driving the energy transition in Nigeria and also Africa through our activities at PAM. The main problem is we all know that Africa has a huge deficit when it comes to energy access. About 70% of the population don't have energy, and about 80 million Nigerians don't have energy. So we want to solve this problem. We do this by developing standalone solar projects, developing one of the first net zero village project, and a huge amount of interest and time spent in innovation. And standalone solar, we have kind of a huge team of experts and engineers that can help deliver on your projects. So if you have any projects in the renewable energy space, specific in solar, we can be your partners on ground to support you with those projects and the relationships that we have built already in that area. We've also developed one of the first net zero village project, and also a huge amount of innovation that has won various awards, such as the EDF Pulse Africa Award. And these are some of the innovations that we've done. Solar Battery Hub, which was actually previously successful at the Energy Catalyst round, the previous round. Why work with us? Quality is very important to us, and we have a huge market presence, and we have an expert team of PhDs and scientists and engineers over here that can support your innovation. We work to international standards, and innovation and trust is also very important. We have a lot of partnerships with various companies, global companies in this space. So we've proven ourselves as a kind of a leader in this in the African markets, and hopefully we would want to work with you to tie in your project in some of the stuff that we're looking into. And we have a super team of energy experts and finance analysts and people who actually can deliver on your project. Thank you very much, and please let's be in touch.
And the Oscar for animation goes to. Really important, actually, there. So halfway through, I was thinking, but they're deploying technologies. You remember that slide that I had with the microscope and the spanner and the briefcase? You need people with spanners to put things in place in country. So a really important resource there. So I can't remember what number we're up to. However, hopefully somebody from Future Earth is here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Ellenson, and I want to take you on a little story here. So Miss Jennifer Mbali installed her solar water pump last year. She pays for it via mobile money installments every month according to her household needs and her income, which is measurably increasing. This morning she received a text message that it was going to rain tonight. So instead of watering her crops, she can fill her reservoir and use that productive use time to do something else of benefit to herself and her family. Now, the emissions avoided by replacing her diesel water pump form part of a wider portfolio of carbon credit investments by global pension funds or individuals. Those are approved by a network of verifiers across the world, and they're available and marketed on international platforms. Now, under Article 6 of the Paris Climate Agreement, the compliance and the voluntary markets, carbon markets are growing, but there are gaps in the story that I just told you. Now, as a systems geographer, I like addressing pithy gaps in stories. So one of my strong suits is gender and social inclusion, and my report on gender integration in the NDCs was launched at last year's COP. And I also like looking at pithy issues in renewable energy and particularly productive use solar around the world. So that brings me here today to Innovate UK. Future Earth Limited works with the UN, we work with INGOs, and we also work in this innovation space, which is very exciting. I can share with you that we're winners of round 9 funding for a mid-stage project looking at productive use solar across 3 countries in Africa. And we're looking for partners for follow-on late-stage funding for that project, looking ahead that it's going to be successful, of course, and also for feasibility project in the same space. So specifically, I'm looking for people with experience of carbon markets, specific experience of MRV, impact reporting, data extraction and analysis, statistical analysis, and linking that to the carbon market. I'm also looking for people who work on the ground, who have wide networks into the communities, who deeply understand community problems, because I want to focus at last mile, bottom of the pyramid stuff where nobody is currently looking in the carbon market. Thank you. There's another slide that says kind of that in other words.
Well, we'll put it up whilst I call the next presenter to the day. Walter? No, not you. Oh, there you are, sir. Excellent.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. My name is Joel Thomas. I'm one of the co-founders of Volta, and I'm here to talk to you about our company. We are a really young startup, focused on climate fintech, and we are focused on connecting people and renewable energy. We are aiming to do so by developing a platform, an upper web, in which normal people could invest into renewable energy just by as simply as clicking in an app or on a web. By doing so, we are aiming to mobilize a great amount of available funds towards the problem of investment needed into renewable energy. And also, we will strengthen the position of the user, which is normally in the customer side, to be also in the owner side, in the energy sector. So by doing so, we gave more power to the people, strengthening their position as a relevant stakeholder in the energy sector. So we would like to implement this system as a pilot project into South Africa, as it's a country with a long tradition of renewable energy auctions, which provide leverage. But within that, our system will also be an incentive toward alleviating the problem of having more installed capacity that's really needed into the South African network. So we're here trying to seek partners, experts into the South African energy business and legislation, as well as on the side, operators and installers of renewable assets, mainly solar panels, as to join with our technical capabilities of our platform and do a pilot project in South Africa. Thank you very much. Please follow us on LinkedIn. Here's the link.
Yeah, don't forget your slides, people. Having said that, that was the last slide. So I'd like to invite Practical Action to come to the stage. And you are standing between people and lunch, so, you know, if you want to keep them on your side, keep it brief.
Right, let's see if we can put that there without falling off. Right, good afternoon, everybody. I should, excuse me, I should try and be as quick as possible. I appreciate that everybody here in the room is probably getting quite hungry, and if you're online, you may be getting even more hungry. Apologies, I don't have a slide. I wasn't aware I was doing this until about 10 minutes ago. So my name is Andy Brown. I work for Practical Action, and in the next 2 minutes, I'll try and tell you who we are, what our interests are, and kind of why we're here in this room today. So Practical Action is an award-winning international development NGO. We're over 50 years old. We work across the globe in Latin America, South Asia and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, but of particular relevance to people in the room today. We work in Bangladesh, Nepal, West Africa, Sudan, Kenya, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, which I think is probably where it's relevant to you. There's lots I can say, but I think particularly of interest to the group here is that what distinguishes us as an NGO is that we have a strong belief that the private sector is critical for sustainable development. If we want to see systems change that creates the change that addresses poverty, addresses climate change, the private sector are critical to that. And we have a long history of partnering with people in the private sector, both from startups through to large established companies. What are our interests? Clean energy and access to clean energy and market development for clean energy have been a key focus for us for a number of decades now. That goes from supporting community projects in the countries we work in through to market development, learning and sharing of information, all the way through to policy development, working with governments on policy development. The key areas that we are working in today, particularly three, are the renewable energy or energy agriculture nexus. How do we make energy and clean energy work for those involved in agriculture? And that's the whole value chain from production, value addition, processing. We're interested in clean cooking, and we have a particular interest in renewable energy for refugees, humanitarian energy. How do we make renewable energy work and improve the lives of those in refugee camps? Okay, so that's kind of who we are and our interests. Why are we in the room today? We obviously as an NGO can't apply to be a lead, but we think we can offer the potential of introductions and be an international partner for those of you who are interested and thinking, how do I get into that international space? How do I have the connections? How do I find people on the ground? We have presence in the ground. We have a long history in all of those countries. We understand the communities, the context, the policies. We have a lot of experience of engaging and mobilizing communities in those countries. We have a lot of experience of grant management. We heard earlier that that can be a little bit of a challenge. Although we wouldn't be the lead, we can support you in grant management. We have funds and grants from FCDO, BEIS. We've had funding from Energy Catalyst before. Or we've worked on Energy Catalyst projects before. So we have a lot of experience of that. Perhaps most importantly is we have an awful lot of experience and expertise in gender equity and social inclusion. It is critical to everything we do and has been for decades. So if you were sitting here listening earlier to, I think it was Charlotte's talk about how to mainstream that, we could be an interesting partner for you to work with. Okay? So we're here all afternoon. If some of that's piqued your interest, please come and have a chat to us. Don't know where it will go, but at least let's start a conversation. Thank you.
Admirably brief, but concise and extremely good value, I felt. Great. Sir, you still happy to pitch? Did you want to? Can't connect slides, no.
No, I'm not trying to, I'm going to talk to it, it's fine.
Sorry, it's just a visual prompt.
Yeah. So I did submit a slide, by the way, just in case anybody's thinking we haven't been prepared. But I'd like to just say, firstly, there have been some really good presentations so far. Hopefully this one will also stimulate some interest both online and in the room. So my name's Nick Kitchen. I'm CEO of a company called Cumulus Energy Storage. And we have our own rechargeable copper zinc battery long duration energy storage, which clearly has a major opportunity across Africa. So we've patent granted in 16 countries. We've raised $6.7 million so far, and if the IRENA research, or rather the IRENA research that we've looked at indicates there's a potential 3 terawatts stroke 12 terawatt hours of energy storage potential across Africa by 2050. This is an absolutely amazing opportunity. So our capabilities include a technology which is 99.5% recyclable. We are able to, or plan to be able to get down to well under the $100 a kilowatt hour fairly quickly, and our round trip efficiency is about 80%, or will be about 80%. So our project, which is a late stage project, we're calling Enabling Africa's Electrification. So the idea is to be able to have a 1 megawatt stroke 4 megawatt hour demonstrator system physically connected behind the meter at a wind farm, which, looking at the distribution of the wind facility across Africa, is probably going to be in South Africa, but not necessarily. So we're looking here at up to 36 months, potential £5 million budget for the project. The vision, or our vision, is to essentially to be able to utilise Africa's existing minerals and energy resources and use those to manufacture and deploy gigafactory scale production across Africa, so we can then deploy those and help Africa to develop further. So partners we're looking for are wind farm owners for demonstration purposes and indeed beyond that, copper, zinc, aluminium, stainless steel manufacturers. Those are some of the materials that go into our energy storage system. Licensees that want to finance gigafactory scale production and country/continental level licensee agreements with those licensees. And finally, but certainly not least, investors looking for circa $50 million US investment opportunities. This is a huge opportunity. Thanks so much.
Well, first of all, my apologies if we got your slide but didn't manage to get it into the deck. That was remiss of me. But way to end on a high note. Fantastic, thank you. Energy storage, often overlooked but critical to any future renewable energy solutions. So I know there's a few people in the room that will probably want to talk with you. I hope that there are other conversations that have been sparked by the pictures. I hope that some people online have been inspired to make contact through the addresses that you've given. A reminder that shortly after we've finished today, we will be distributing the slides to everybody here and online. So if you missed a particular email address, wait a couple of days, it'll be with you. At that point, I would like to thank my colleagues in Innovate UK for making this all happen. You wouldn't believe the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to make these competitions actually happen in reality. So well done, everybody, dealing with those hardships. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please avail yourself of the lunch and the time that we've set aside for networking. This is really valuable time at the start of your Energy Catalyst Round 10 submission.